Welcome to another edition of NJCDC's podcast from the Loft at our Great Falls Youth Center. I'm Bob Garashi, CEO of New Jersey Community Development Corporation, and co-hosting with me today is Eddie Gonzalez, my special assistant and the Director of Community Outreach.
Welcome.
Today, we're pleased to welcome our friends from the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs, a large state agency that touches the lives of New Jerseyans from one end of the state to the other. And as we'll hear from our guest, DCA is in charge of many important areas, ranging from affordable housing programs to overseeing local government agencies to offering a variety of programs to help build stronger communities and neighborhoods. Here at NJCDC, we are no stranger to the programs of DCA, as we participate in the department's Neighborhood Revitalization Tax Credit Program, and we've also benefited from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to help us build much-needed affordable housing. And now, to introduce our guest, we have Kaya King, the Chief of Staff to the Commissioner of DCA, and Jennifer Underwood, who is the Administrator of the Office of Community Services within the Department's Division of Housing and Community Resources. Welcome to you both. Welcome to Patterson. Welcome to NJCDC. And before we begin, I can't help but acknowledge that this very space that we're in today, our new podcast studio, was constructed recently with state funds that flowed through DCA. And this studio is representative, I think, of how DCA helps nonprofits and communities to obtain resources that respond to community needs. In this instance, this podcast studio will help us amplify the voice of Patterson's youngest residents, and it will also allow us to hear from guests like both of you today that can help educate our listeners about government and other agencies that seek to build a better New Jersey. And with that, Kaya and Jen, I'd like to ask you to take a moment and introduce yourselves.
Thank you so much, Bob. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. We're here in, I think, a living realized reality of some of the grant funds. One of the many reasons I think myself and Jen wanted to be up here is I think we see the paper pushing every day, right? Folks know that in government. But it is really nice to see the physical manifestation of the time, the commitment, the hours, I think that Jen and everybody on our team at DCA really contributes. And so that's a really nice and privileged space to be in this morning. But as you had indicated, I'm the Chief of Staff of the Department of Community Affairs. And thank you. I think that's a perfect summarization of kind of what we do a little bit. I'll kick it over to Jen, and then I'd like to share a bit about how DCA is actually really meeting communities where they are before we get into some substantive info.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm Jennifer Underwood, and I am the Administrator of the Office of Community Services at DCA, and I am really excited to be here today, and congratulations on the podcast studio. It's really awesome.
Thank you. And as Kaya said, Jen, you've seen this on paper,
yes,
right? Lots of paper and reports, and so happy that you could be here today.
Thank you.
So I think, Bob, you gave a great introduction or a bit of a flavor of what the department does. I think the running joke we often find even in our own department is when folks hear community affairs, it's a bit of a catch-all. And it's one I think we welcome, but it does mean that we get a bit of a smorgasbord of the various flavor of just government services that can be done. You noted affordable housing, the supporting of local government, planning services, everything also to Government Records Council, Urban Enterprise Zone Development, New Jersey Redevelopment Authority, Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency, and then even our safety sides of the shop, fire and safety and codes and standards. So it does give a bit of a potpourri, I think, and in a way that probably is what community affairs is. And so it makes us, I think, stronger because we have all these various complements. But we've looked at it, myself and Commissioner Jacqueline Suarez, with the entire team of how do we actually take these services, amplify them, and really get them to folks in a way that's customized to really support New Jersey residents. So in our bit of a think tank internally, and looking, I think, at all the initiatives that we're doing, we looked at this as a three-prong approach. Number one, and I think this is probably familiar for both you and Eddie, data-driven decision making, right? How are we taking all of this important information that is sourced to us, whether by requirement and statute or regulation, or just otherwise in the systems that we've developed, so that we can make more intuitive and proactive decisions, not so much reactive, which folks may assume with government, we tend to be the reactionary folks. So we want to change that concept. Next thing I think, and it's apropos for the space today, is the stakeholder engagement and collaboration. And this is a beautiful example of that. And I think it's also a way that we're taking away the stigma or intimidation element. I think that comes when folks think about government, especially the state level, coming to trusted community voices like NJCDC and Patterson, and being able for folks to say, hey, wait a second, those folks from Trenton, they're coming across the state. They're coming to our neighborhoods. They're seeing the work every day. And then lastly, and I think, Bob and Eddie, you guys both have, I think, a lot of experience with this, but solutions-focused approaches to challenges, right? When we have a challenge that we're not saying, no, we can't do that, or we've always done it this way, we can't imagine another way, that we're getting creative, right?
Yes.
And working with someone like Jen, right, where her and I have been able to be in the trenches together in our work, we've been able to see the yes come to fruition. And that really takes, I think, a change of concept, right? Attitude and approach. So again, I think we're creatures of the same stripes, right? DCA and NJCDC. So this felt like, I think, a perfect opportunity for us to really layer in how we're supporting the communities.
That's wonderful. You remind me of something. I've never been one to really quote Ronald Reagan, but he used to have a line that he would say, and he'd say, some of the scariest words that people can hear is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. But I think at least here in New Jersey, and certainly with the Department of Community Affairs, that's been dispelled, because my experiences have, over a stretch of years, have really been nothing but positive. And the department, I think, is really poised to help people in so many different ways.
That's right. And we wanted to make sure that this first episode, right, and to us, this really summarized, right, community conversations. How are we going to bring information to folks? And I think also give folks a peek behind the curtain, right? What actually is the mechanics of government, right? When we talk about grants or community resources, which sounds like a bit of a mammoth concept, what does it take to really get the money, out the door and really get this to be realized, right? To be manifested in the communities. And that's why it seemed perfect to start off with Jen from our department. I want to ask Jen a couple of questions, because she's really the brain behind what we do in the grants administration. She's who I call the running joke, I think, too. And I said this to Jen maybe a couple months into my time, where we'd have external folks call and they say, I have this grant, I'm trying to get this money out the door. And they'd run up the flagpole and I'd say, oh gosh, I'm not the person who makes that decision. I'm going to call Jen Underwood and she's going to be able to help us. And every time, answering the call. But Jen, do you mind if I give a little bit of background to, how you became the Jen Underwood?
No, not at all.
All right, perfect. So Jen had given me a little bit of bio, so I wanted to share this because I think it's important to see, the journey, right? And one of the beautiful parts is I think our department is made up of different New Jersey residents from across the state who have their own kind of pathways that they got here, right, to provide service to folks. So, Jen has indicated she's the administrator for our Office of Community Services. She's got a BA in political science from Seton Hall. So go Seton Hall State School. And she spent many years working in the nonprofit field. Jen specialized in work with individuals with intellectual disabilities. She touts herself as a true New Jersey girl who can recite towns by exit numbers, New Jersey colleges by sports mascots, although she's partial to the Pirates. I had to put that in here. We've all got our preferences. And shore towns by beach ranking order. Oh, you have to tell me how to do that.
Oh yeah, man. I'm from Ocean County, so
it's in your blood, I think, right? So, when she is not improving the delivery of government services and really supporting all the incredible organizations in the state, she's partnering with nonprofit orgs, right, to improve the capacity to deliver the services, right, more effectively in the community. I look at Jen to be someone who's an adapter, right? She will, make sure that there is a way to get to the yes. And Jen is also a frequent volunteer and board member. She serves on some educational committees. She's got true geek status as demonstrated by her certified Roma implementer in New Jersey. And she's also known to have a love of data, which you and I have that shared love. And those outcomes and making sure that we're analyzing information so that we're constantly improving, right? Constantly getting better. So, Jen, you and I have been, constantly aligned on those types of things. So, I wanted to ask you first and foremost, right? Folks may hear generally about Department of Community Affairs. I think they may be familiar with the Division of Housing Community Resources Housing Shop, right? I know that we are the largest housing authority in the state, so we do issue thousands of vouchers every year. But I don't think too many folks in the community know about the community resources part of that shop. Can you share a bit about that component and that type of work that you handle every day?
Sure. So I'm really not the only person on that side, obviously. We have many other offices, including Office of Homelessness Prevention, Office of Eviction Prevention, there's weatherization, lead programs. Of course, I'm most familiar with the Office of Community Services. And within that office, we not only have federal dollars through Community Services Block Grant, but we also have many state-funded programs. We do some rec programs, trying to support individuals with disabilities through integrated programming. We have an athletics grant that works on or supports a statewide competition for athletes with disabilities. So, those two are very popular programs. We serve many people across the state through a variety of ways. And then, of course, we have a financial empowerment pilot program, which NJCDC is familiar with. That's a brand new program. It's a pilot, and we're striving to assist folks with their financial literacy, increasing their credit scores, many different programs through those 10 agencies throughout the state. So that's brand new, and we're hoping that, we're having an impact there as well. So, and of course, one of the larger things that has come my way has been helping to administer line items in the state budget for grants that have been awarded. So that has been a very interesting thing, and those programs run the gamut. We have construction projects, we have social service projects, reentry programs, you name it, we've got it. So it's been a very exciting time, I think, at the state as well as DCA.
Yeah, and I know you and I have had to work on some of those, legislative grants together, right? And what is so, I think, refreshing about the state of New Jersey is that we're creative. I mean, I do think that whether it be community-based organizations really coming up with thoughtful concepts, holistic concepts, I think also our legislators and executive branch, like we're really trying to think differently about how we can take some of this funding and really make it stretch.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, in terms of, I think you named some programs and you touched a bit on some of the assistance. Can you talk a bit about the type of assistance and support that you give as an administrator? What does that look like when you're dealing with grantees?
Well, so first and foremost, we are partners. We're partners with our agencies. We want to support them because the more we support them, we feel that the better they can be at effectively providing their programs, and being successful in providing the programs means they've made an impact on the people who are coming through their doors looking for services, right? So we are really out there trying to provide that technical assistance with our grant management system, which everybody jokes on, but I kind of like it.
Sage.
Right, Sage. You can't do anything without Sage.
I like Sage.
Right. So, there's a lot of technical assistance in regards to our, that system, just walking agencies through the application process to executed grant, and then hopefully, having them provide their billing and progress reports. So those are like the nuts and bolts of my technical assistance. But the other part of it really is to make sure that if you are looking for additional resources, I can potentially connect you to other people who can help you with those resources. We're looking to collaborate. Certainly, I think that, there are a variety of agencies here in Paterson. We would love to be able to have a more collaborative community with our agencies so that, we're not kind of, crossing or, duplicating the services, right? Because there's a finite dollars and, and you can only go so far with them. So if we can leverage the dollars, that's a better way to provide services. So those are really the things that I think about when I am asked questions about, oh, how can I do this? How can I do that? I don't want to say no.
Yes.
I do want to say yes, but I also know that I have to work within the confines of my programs, right? I have parameters that I need to meet. So, some people are looking for certain things. They want to, utilize federal dollars for that. Well, those programs are oftentimes a little bit more stringent in what you can and cannot do. So, that's really what we're looking to do. We're looking to provide that partnership and community and collaboration. I would say those are probably the biggest things.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in here, I can attest to that because I think I probably have you on speed dial. Have had occasion to call Jen on any number of occasions, and it's always about, well, you know what, there's this issue or perhaps this obstacle, and how do we get over it? What do we do? How do we revise the grant application? And the advice is always in the context of, yeah, let's talk about that, but more importantly, let's figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that.
Of course. I do think that my biggest role is being a customer service representative, whether or not I am providing customer service directly to the public, which I'm often not. But if somebody calls, I'm going to respond, and you are my customer, so I want to have a positive interaction with you. So, I feel like that's our role as state workers, really, state employees. We should be a customer service organization.
It's a wonderful philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's getting more contagious, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes there's this assumption, right, that when you interact with government, whether it be, when you're in a, happy point in your life or a challenging point, you want to feel like your taxpayer dollars are in service. And, I think that we all take that really serious, in the state. And, I know for you too, I look at my family, right? And, all the services or needs that they're starting to have. I have older parents, right? So you start
Mm-hmm.
to think about, well, where are they able to get that support? How is it accessible, right? And even having children, like that starts to change your vantage of this. So I know it's informed me of how I'm delivering service, right? If I'm talking to, a mom out there, a dad, right? Someone who's, 17, 16, looking for information, right? How is that, able to be received, and how can people understand it and utilize it?
Yeah, I agree.
So I think even to that lens, right? So when we look at, NJCDC, known quantity, there's a couple of really strong community-based orders across the state that have done an incredible amount of work, right,
Mm-hmm.
with the funding. But if you're a new community-based org, right, you've got an interesting, vision. You really want to address a certain population where there's an unmet need. I'm wondering, it may be a bit intimidating. So what advice would you give to those groups that they want to help? They want to do what CDC has done, in Patterson, but they don't really know where to start. What advice would you give them as you've helped to usher, probably hundreds of different grantees over your time at DCA?
So first, if you're coming through DCA, I would always encourage you to be in our grant management system, because there's always opportunities that come down the pike that are available to you. If you're going to apply to one of those things, I encourage you to read the RFP very closely so that you are, an eligible entity and can apply for those fundings, that funding, because you don't want to spin your wheels. If it's something that's not already developed or somebody's kind of doing that, I would just encourage the collaboration with your peers. Who are the people who already have their boots on the ground, who are kind of doing that thing, or maybe you just want to partner with that agency because they're in your community, right? And they're already doing something. So that would really be what I would encourage. Certainly, we're always happy to facilitate those meetings, get folks together in a room, on a call, whatever it is, to talk it out, because you don't know where that conversation is going to go. It
Yeah.
could be
Yeah.
anywhere.
And, if I could just jump in here, I served for a decade on the board of the Housing and Community Development Network. And there's a category within the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for innovation projects. And the network was able to get one that's now allowing them to work with smaller nonprofits to teach them the nuts and bolts of how to do affordable housing and how to access funding through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for that purpose. And I think initiatives like that are really important and essential to helping newer organizations really gain the capacity to do important work.
Yeah, I think the department is looking more intentionally at how do we really kind of train and empower, right, the community folks, to do the work. That I think we're starting to get away from this concept of bifurcating this so much, right? That we're state departments and we can only do this stuff, and it's like let's share the wealth, right? Let's share the resources. With what you'd said, Bob, it brings to mind, I know we've been proactively working on addressing lead abatement, right?
Yes.
And our lead remediation and assistance program has a training component in mind, because when we were finding we were privileged to receive an incredible landmark amount of federal funding, right, to address that. And our Assistant Commissioner of Housing and Community Resources, Janelle Winter, and her team, we were so excited to get the money, right? That had never happened before. But then the, challenge became, so who do we give the money to that can do this work?
Yeah.
And so facing that challenge and then saying, okay, we've got to bring folks together. We've got to utilize folks that know how to do that work. And let's train individuals up. Let's train grantees that maybe have never done this work and empower them, get them into a space and have an opportunity to make that cogent impact. But that requires us giving that extra hand. And I think, like you said, half of the work is, kind of getting folks structured in the system. The other half is just ushering, right? Holding that hand to get them through the process successfully.
And that's an example that we're familiar with because we're one of the recipients of that lead remediation grant, but it's actually something we haven't done before. But the need here in Patterson is so great that we said, let's give this a try. And we have several people who are now undergoing the training, and we're going to become proficient to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, these are systemic shifts, right? Like, I think what's exciting about especially the work you do, Jen, is that it's a 360 view. We're not just looking at a grant that's just about an after school program, for example, right? It could be about upgrades, right, to a facility that's for the youth. It could be about accessibility, right, for different organizations, so they're meeting their stakeholders, right, and who they're serving.
Anything that pushes the objectives of what you're trying to do, I think, is on the table. Right.
I think that's a good way to think of it. And I think that there are a lot of groups that have good ideas, often novel ideas, but just need a helping hand in a number of different areas. So I often think, and particularly here in Patterson, what can we do as a somewhat established organization to help those younger organizations? And sometimes it's easy. Well, the city of Patterson will put out an RFP for community development block grant funds. And what we've done is we've actually held seminars to help other nonprofits here learn how to fill out those grant application forms. And some of them have been successful. When it comes to things like construction projects, though, it gets kind of complicated. And try as we might, we're not necessarily on our own able to provide them with enough assistance so that they themselves can then go out and do things like build affordable housing. But partnering with the department, I think, is an excellent way to really get to that point.
And I'll make a plug at this point, Bob. Like, I think, you touched on something really important, right? There's so many different components to get to the finish line, right? For any project you're doing. And like you said, there's a compliance end, right? Which is that
Yes.
construction and codes. We're really excited at the department. We have finally set up an electronic program book, and I'll give a plug. You can check out the DCA website, go right on there. We've got a great slide on there. You can click on it, and that's an electronic PDF. It's got a breakdown of not only every division, but every office, what they do with an email contact, so that you're
Wonderful.
able to go right to the source and really see. Because if you go to state websites, and I think we're doing a much better job in the state of making that accessible, but if you need to know the full flavor, it's a little hard to do. You're going to go to a couple of different spots. So we've made it a
Yes.
one-stop, and we'll share that with your organization to promote out, but that's available in English and Spanish, and we're hoping to get that translated into even more languages for folks.
Oh, that's great. It's good to hear.
I know too, Jen, I think we had touched in your bio a little bit about, Jersey girl, born and raised of it, but I was wondering if you could share with us a bit of, how did you get here? Why did you decide to get into this work? Was there something in your journey, personally or professionally, that, really got you to this important place?
I don't know. It seems like it's just a winding road, when I graduated from college, it's like, who's going to take a chance on, just some young kid who wants to help people, and that's really what it turns into, right? So I was working with an organization that is in Pennsylvania. I started in PA, and we worked with folks with disabilities, and I kind of worked my way up. And then you get to the point where you're like, well, what else is out there, right? So I had an opportunity to come to New Jersey and work with individuals who were currently in developmental centers to move them into the community. So that was a really interesting opportunity. But then, of course, you feel like your journey's not done. So I have to say, I kind of answered an ad.
I didn't expect
Okay.
that. Okay.
Right, I saw the thing on the
Back
civil
when it was
service.
printed in a newspaper?
Well, it was the civil service website, right? And I thought, oh, maybe I think I could maybe do that, right?
Yeah.
So, and that was a process. That was you submit, you get an interview, you take a test. It was this crazy thing. But, I landed in the lap of the Office of Community Services, and, I started out as, just working solely with CSBG, and then, you kind of make your way. I feel like I did kind of create my own space at DCA. So I just, it's like, the next step, the next step, the next step, right? It's the natural progression of things. And I would have never in a million years thought I would have been at a state department, because I was about in the community and working with people. But here you are impacting many people behind the scenes with the work that you're doing. So while I may not be, helping someone directly every day, but we are,
Yeah.
right? You just don't see it.
And Jen, it's interesting. My journey is almost in reverse, because I started out in state government some 30 years ago, and I was at the Department of Human Services and worked in the commissioner's office. And at that time, the department oversaw everything from programs for people with developmental disabilities, as it still does, and mental illness, and also the Division of Economic Assistance, as it was called then. I think it's called Family Development now.
I think so.
TANF and other programs. Child Protective Services at that time was within Human Services. And I'm, over a period of 4 years, seeing all of this, kind of having a bird's eye view of the state's social service delivery system. And then I said, this is great and this knowledge is terrific, but what about taking it and applying it out there in the community? And Patterson was a city that I knew best. I grew up next door in Bergen County. And so my journey was one of learning initially by being in state government and then taking it out into community-based settings. So it's interesting how our objectives are the same, but the paths have been a little bit different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's interesting, both of your stories, because here being at the Great Falls Youth Center, um, we are fortunate enough to have a school right next to us, a high school that has 2,000 students that we benefit from having, join our programs here at the Great Falls Youth Center, who will be participating in this great podcast session as well, as we begin to build it out. And I think these stories are important for them because I think we need more mentors in the city. We need more individuals who, like yourselves, can share these stories and give some direction, right? Because I've always was told that an adult changes their careers about 7 times, right? So it's okay never, to be exact about where you want to go, where you're going to end up. If you're not sure, there's kids who are in college today who just still don't know where they're going to end up, and it's okay. But I think these conversations are very important to have so that our youth who will be listening to this podcast and others, that they can, hopefully fill some of these shoes in these various fields, whether they want to get into government first or, do some community service work like we are doing today. So thank you for sharing.
Great point. Great point.
I know that, even hearing both of your journeys, I think what compels me to it is that there isn't a straight line to any of this, right?
That's
And
right.
I think that it's a beautiful opportunity, and I know I had a bit of bumps and roads to find my spot, which is DCA, but it's funny that I think we're all similarly situated of feeling like, well, how did I blend maybe what was my inherent passion or what I knew was going to bring me joy, right, in this life with something that was work, so that it sustains you, it motivates you.
So can I jump in there,
Sure.
Kaya, and ask you to talk a little bit about that? What exactly does a chief of staff to a commissioner do? What a question, right?
Great question.
And what have you done professionally that has then allowed you to get to the position that you're in now?
Sure. So I think so. I've been in the chief of staff role coming up to about 10 months. And what I would say is you do have to be able to, I think you're not a novice at one particular thing, but you need to be engaged in a little bit of everything and have a sentiment. I look at it sometimes that if it's coming all the way up to the top, right, and my role is to really support the department and the commissioner and us carrying out the mission and purpose of the department. So I think sometimes it feels like I may be in a bit of a currency of issues, right? We walk into the day and typically if it's coming up to upstairs to us, there's an issue. What I love about the work is that you develop a bit of a social intelligence. What's so exciting, I think, working at community affairs is that, it's about the programs, but I think more importantly, it's about the relationships we create. Commissioner Suarez and I think, have really staked our career and work on how are we collaborating, how are we sharing, and how are we also, I think, humbling ourselves to learn. And I think that there's a great opportunity when you do this work and you're able to be in the room where decisions are being made to really get perspective that you wouldn't get otherwise. I can tell you, my professional journey started, I think a bit similar to Jen's, right? Of just really wanting to come from a place where my parents had made a lot of sacrifices. They helped me get through college and law school. And when I got out of law school, we were kind of told of just a couple paradigms, right? You could, work for a big corporate law firm, right? And be a slave to billable hours.
Yes.
You could, be a defense attorney and, earn no money. Or you could be a prosecutor, right? And law and order your way through things. And I remember thinking, I don't like any of these. It's like, I don't know how any of this,
Oh boy.
maybe is helping in that day to day. And so I did a bit of a zigzag path. I think I had worked in private briefly, and then I started working at the county level. I worked for Monmouth County. I worked for their local board of social services, which I loved because you're helping families.
Sure.
You're helping to assist and really make sure that folks were getting Medicaid, right? We're getting support. And that really incentivized me to figure out, okay, how are other ways that you can help people? How can you help families? And then I had an opportunity to tip up into state government. And did a couple stints, right? Stopped at a couple different spots, worked for Comptroller's Office, Department of Labor. But when I came to DCA, that I think was really where I found a home in terms of the colleagues and the work, right? Because you had people of different professions, different expertises who were coming in and saying, okay, we're going to take all this intellectual and, experience bandwidth and say, let's share with each other. Let's work on things collaboratively. And more significantly, let's figure out how we can make it better. Mm-hmm. So I think the philosophy of the workforce we have, of even the commissioner we have right now, and even predecessors, I think it's a similar mental space. You got to want to help and really love it.
Well, that's really interesting. And we were privileged, a month, 2 months ago, to have Commissioner Suarez come and visit us here in Patterson. And I got the same exact feeling about her, this overwhelming desire to use the office that she holds to help people, a real genuine sense of that. And I hope that she got a view of Patterson that helps her to understand that this is a wonderful city, a historic city, right? Founded by Alexander Hamilton back in 1792, but also a city that's fallen on hard times, a city of great people, hardworking people, but people who oftentimes need a hand to get to that next level. And looking at you and the commissioner and Jen, I think we're just so fortunate to have professionals who are committing their lives to helping to extend that hand to people, whether here in Patterson or elsewhere, who really need some assistance. Yeah. So we thank you for that.
Thank you. I know too, what's been exciting about this time, right? I think we also have an opportunity with the administration and seeing, I think, this cross collaboration of departments. I know Commissioner was actually at an event, I think a couple weeks back, on the lead work, right, that we're pushing through. And, DP Commissioner Sean LaTourette was there. Also, I think DOH Commissioner, Dr. Basson was there. And here was, to me, I think a really exceptional moment, right? And I think we want to, I think, have a concept that our governments are talking to each other and working together. And I think in many ways that has to happen. But the proactivity I think we're seeing from our executive leadership, and then I think it becomes a positive contagiousness that then trickles down to the county and to the local, is really incentivizing people. And I know we're trying to think of ways that we're, sharing data, right? Or sharing information. I know Jen talked about, sometimes, and I think we often get this because people hear community affairs. So we're the first call often. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you, and, Jen, you probably could speak to this more in the pandemic, if folks weren't able to maybe get to locals or get to another state department, they call over to us. So I think all of us aren't just versed in what we do. We have to also see, well, we've got this part of the shop or this solution to this part of the issue, but where else are we going to now send you to or make a connection so that we can help you with the other part of that, right? Because it's not just housing. It's not just utilities, right? Maybe it's unemployment. Maybe it's motor vehicle. Maybe it's, human services and getting support for, your, family members, right? And that, I think, has made, everybody at the department, a DCA focus expert, but then some, because I think nobody wants to leave a call or an outreach with, well, this is all we could do, right? Or here's all we have and goodbye. I feel like more times than not, I hear of folks who said, well, we don't have this, but then I checked on X, Y, and Z, and I gave them this number and I called over to this person, and that's our job.
Sure. And it's really interesting to hear you say that. And Eddie, I'll ask you to say a few words about it. Take that concept to the local level. What we've done here at NJCDC is we've created a space that we call the Neighborhood Help Center. And the Neighborhood Help Center is a place for neighborhood residents to come to get help with whatever they're grappling with. And we may not have the answer ourselves, but we have committed people who are determined to find out where they should go, because all too often people just don't know where to go. It may not be they may think it's a municipal issue, but it's actually a county issue. Or they may think it's a county issue, but it's a state issue. And Eddie and his team of people really help individuals to kind of navigate those various systems to get to the place they need to find that help. You want to talk about that for a
Sure. Thank you,
moment?
Bob. So to your point, I mean, it's like, we do a lot of similar things, obviously at a local, very local level. And we do like to think that we treat our, what we call clients with white glove service. And it's not just refer people off to where we think they'll get their assistance or maybe, further help or whatnot, but it's actually sitting there making sure that they have the appointment, making sure that the individual on the other end of that call is very receptive to our clients' needs. And then there's an appointment made that we make sure we remind the clients of the appointment, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of individuals come into the neighborhood help center where some of my colleagues, we do a basic intake form where they come in and fill out their information, but they come in thinking that, they need housing. And sometimes they need a lot more than just housing. So we sit with them one on one and consult with them, and we realize, okay, well, you definitely need housing. However, you also need more income because what you're asking for, you don't qualify for whatever reasons, whether it may be income or, household, the amount of folks in your household may disqualify you from, applying for such apartments, et cetera, et cetera. And then we refer them. We're building a list of developers as well as working with our local agencies like the Housing Authority and other agencies that do shelter or whatever have you as it relates to housing to make sure we have a strong database of active, as active and live information as possible, so that we can refer folks to these resources and actually filter it down, right? Because a lot of folks come in and sometimes they just don't qualify, like I said. So having that information at our disposal helps us really get services quickly to the people who need it most. And we can't do that without partnerships and in partnerships with you, the DCA, and many other departments, as well as our local nonprofits who also share in this effort to assist community folks in the city of Patterson who obviously like I said, they come in for housing, and we enroll them into an ESL program. We enroll them into childcare and getting their kids into a school or a better fitting school for their children, etc. So we try to provide the best service we can. We call it the white glove service. We don't let anyone slip through cracks, and I think we've done a pretty good job at that.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because a lot of them come back not asking but volunteering, and they give hundreds of hours of their time to throughout the years to help us kind of launch a new program, even just to simply do a door go to door knocking campaign events to make sure that we're distributing the information that we have for new programs or services that NJCDC is offering to our local community. And then in some cases we actually recruited some to to become community advisory board members, local leaders in the community that really want to see their neighborhood change, not just within their four walls in their home, but also their, business community, the streets. They want to make sure the streets are clean, the lights are on at night, et cetera, et cetera. So, they join us and bring us a lot of the, valuable information that we may not have at a very, very local level to the block level. And then they join, and then in some cases we even hire them. We've done that. That's a good pipeline for folks in our community.
And Eddie, if I could just jump in there, it's so much about giving voice to people, right. And making sure that residents here in this city understand that they do have a voice in the decisions that are being made, and oftentimes they feel disempowered. Our job is to make them feel empowered. Now, by the way, one area where we do that, that is kind of my favorite area, is with young people. Here we sit in the podcast studio that's part of the Great Falls Youth Center. We have a overriding commitment to the young people of this city. About 16 or 17 years ago, we started a concept where we facilitate a body called the Patterson Youth Council. It's a group of 30 high school students who participate in a year-long leadership development program So they not only learn about everything from the business world to the arts, but it also provides them with a platform to participate in civic affairs to ensure that the youth voice is heard. And so, for example, when the city council here was considering imposing a youth curfew, it was really important for the members of the youth council to be there to give their thoughts on that. And when the Board of Education was debating whether or not there should be a minimum grade point average in order to participate in sports and other extracurricular activities, it was important for the members of the youth council to be part of that conversation. Prior to having the youth council, decisions were made about young people without young people having any role in those decisions. And so giving voice to all residents, whether young, whether not young, is an important part of the work that we do.
I love this idea, and I think this is probably similar to even where, government's going, is that the youth that we're seeing coming up are refreshingly contrarian, right?
I
To
like
these
that.
concepts, right, of just, it's okay that, the prior generations did it this way. We want to do it a different way. And they're multifaceted, right? I mean, the access to information that we're seeing, right, for children that I don't think was ever in existence before, especially the immediacy, they're taking that and thinking really dynamically about real world issues and thoughtful solutions. I know, even when we look to start this concept together, what was so exciting was that this gives a concept of government coming directly to the youth and being able to have a conversation. Because I think our biggest challenge, right, when I think of even the state and how we like rebrand, which is something that we talk about often, because in a way, right, we're customer service and we're in the business of people, right? And that's what you all do too, right? We do it from the state framework, but we are in the commodity of services for people, where they are, for who they are in that moment in time. And when we do these collaborations with your organization, when youth are able to actually see, oh, wait, here's someone from government who's in the space who wants to hear what I have to say, and that my voice can have a real-time impact, that's, just soul motivation, right? That's going to really make sure we're keeping that, I think, spiritual tank, right, to really be in public service going at a young age. I think I had that fire kind of lit in my world because I had family that always tried to volunteer or help. They just took that ballot on. I suspect you had that too, Bob, Eddie, right? Like, I think we all had those compass points. And doing this in this space for the youth of today means that we're meeting them where they're going to be interested. Because it really doesn't matter if we have all the money in the world or we have the perfect idea of a program. If the communities we serve are like, this doesn't fit us, this isn't actually what our need is right now, then we're not meeting, our mission.
That's right. And it's really important. One of the key things that we do in almost every program is surveys, because the work that we do ought to be informed by the people who we hope to benefit from it.
Right.
And I think that's particularly the case with young people, because I might think I know what young people are thinking about a particular issue, and I always invariably find out, boy, was I wrong. and so getting their input at the outset is really important. When we started this youth council 16 years ago, it was almost as if people said, well, wait a minute, you mean you want to give young people a say in the decisions that affect them? Well, yes, that's exactly what we want to do. It seemed like it was some type of revolutionary idea, but 16 years later, it's really caught on here in the city. In fact, one of my favorite events is each year the Youth Council holds forums during election season, whether it's the mayor, the city council. But my favorite is the Board of Education, because here you have a group of adults who want to serve on the Board of Education. And in the audience are 50 or 60 young people, peppering them with questions about, well, what are you going to really do? Because your decisions are going to affect us. Right. And they turn up the heat on them. And it's there's nothing for me and Eddie and others more gratifying than watching Board of Education candidates squirm a little bit because they have to answer to the people
Right.
who ultimately they're going to serve.
That's right.
So that youth voice is critical.
That's right. Well, you know what? To me, that's a check and balance, right? That's when we have community voices, when we have the voices of our youth, when we have voices of our residents, right? That's an accountability loop for us government folks, right? That tells us, okay, maybe we missed the ball on this, right? Maybe we need to recalibrate because, you know, the work is never done, right?
That's right.
We have to be adaptable and change. So I love that. And it keeps folks on their toes. And if we don't question our civic, you know, engagement, we don't question folks who are in these rooms and decisions, we're not having a say on where we're moving, right? And we're doing a disservice to ourselves.
That's
So,
right.
you know, I think there's this perfect kind of middle of being productively uncomfortable that can happen when those things occur.
Good concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes us better, right?
And, you know, government is a wonderful institution, and we need government on all levels for so many different things. But one of the things that we're realizing is you don't always need government to get something done. So one of the constant laments here in Patterson is that from a land use perspective, there's no rhyme or reason to how things are built and where things are built. And what cities often do is they create a master plan to try and give some boundaries to that. Well, Patterson has a master plan, but it oftentimes just doesn't seem as though it's followed. So Patterson needs a new master plan. But who says that that has to be led by government? Who says that we have to wait for municipal government to call meetings to talk about a new master plan for the city? I don't want to sound too revolutionary, but what we want all of those that we serve, whether young people or adults, to understand is you don't necessarily have to wait for something to be government driven, that it is very possible for things to be citizen driven. And in fact, many times that's more effective.
Yeah. Well, and I think even historically we've seen that to be true, right? I mean, some of the biggest, you know, changes and structures that happened, you know, in our nation's history came from people saying, this doesn't make sense.
That's right.
Or this isn't fair. And we need
the civil rights movement.
Exactly. Even as I think about, you know, and Jen, I know you've supported this population, right? Like for Americans with Disabilities Act. I mean, that was something that came out of folks saying like, enough is enough.
Right.
You know, we're going to decide to have some more humanity injected into our law and structure because we didn't want to live in a world where we were treating people so inequitably or despairingly. And that's I think what also then forces us in government to question and get better.
Yes, absolutely. The quote attributed to Margaret Mead about, you know, well, question is, can ordinary people really make change? And she said something along the lines of, well, you know, indeed, it's a group of ordinary citizens, and I'm paraphrasing here, who really have been responsible for some of the biggest changes in our nation.
That's right.
So.
That's right.
And the state is lucky to have both of you, as well as our Commissioner Jacqueline Suarez, leading the charge. And, you know, a lot of the things that are said here today, that have been said here today, I don't think is so uncommon anymore, because to your point about the youth, you know, changing things, I guess us adults, we have to get used to that. So I think that's becoming more common as we see them being more vocal. In fact, talking about the Patterson Youth Council not long ago, we were just discussing whether they advocate for changing the voter age for school board elections for the age of 16. I believe Newark already did that through the city council. So that they're currently in discussion about that as well. So at this point, nothing surprised me. So
no, that's true. It's true. But no, I agree with Eddie, and really can't thank you enough for coming to Patterson. It is really just a delight to hear from you, to learn more about you, both personally and professionally, and would love to give you an opportunity to say something before we conclude.
Sure. I'll throw it to Jen first.
Boy, that's the hot seat.
The smart.
I just, want to say, look, we appreciate the opportunity. I think things like this are really important. It's great to get the word out. And, this is something new. It's something new for us. And of course, we didn't say no,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah, that's right. We don't have no in our vocabulary.
right. So who knows where
We'll remember that.
No, you can't have more money.
It's a new world.
But I just think this is an opportunity to really kind of just spread the word and create more collaboration and connections with each other, and I think we shouldn't lose sight of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think this has been, I think, a good first opportunity and one of many more to come where we in government can decide to just come to the table and come into our communities real time.
Sure.
I thank you, Bob, and you, Eddie, and really NJCDC, I think, for it's eye-opening, right? And every time that myself, commissioner, anybody I think in the DCA team is able to go into these neighborhoods, meet people, and then hear the everyday impact, it's motivating. It drives us. It keeps that fire going, right? To kind of get up and hear challenges and figure out solutions, and on our part, I think these conversations are where you'll see real transformation. If we do this and hopefully it catches on more and more of, government, right? And us in that tower kind of coming down and really saying we're going to be with people in a real permanent way as we move together to improve our residents, right? And our communities. That's going to be the tipping point. And hopefully, the youth are going to challenge us and we're going to get even better at it every time.
That's right. And now you will have always been the first because now I'm motivated, Eddie. So we have to call our friends at DEP and get someone to come here and talk about issues of environmental justice.
That's right.
And maybe someone at the Department of Health to say, come and talk to us about issues of public health, or the Department of Transportation to talk about the road system here and how are we going to improve it.
Yeah.
And we're always going to be able to say it all started with you and the Department of Community Affairs. So thank you so much for coming today. And we look forward to working with you hand in hand for many more years to come.
Thanks so much, Bob.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie. Thanks for having us.